In order to track down every single unique M&M's character, what had to be searched through were the video games. It's no secret there exist many games out there featuring the M&M's on a variety of platforms, but the question is, do they contain any unique, never before seen characters? Starting first, we have M&M's Minis Madness, a Game Boy Advance game from the year 2000. Outside of the game's 4 main characters, as well as the minis, there are several small-time enemies sprinkled throughout the game's 4 levels, who don't have personality traits and are instead just basic objects themed to each world. There's roughly 10 different little guys you'll run into, one of which being a tiny forklift. Taking a look at another game from the same year, we have the M&M's The Lost Formulas on PC, also known as M&M's Shell Shocked on the PS1 the following year. Each game is slightly different, but for the most part they're the same, so we're going to focus mainly on the more complete version, The Lost Formulas. Content-wise, there's a lot more to The Lost Formulas than Minis Madness. The game takes place over several more levels, of which contain significantly more enemies. The enemies are again rather lame, with the majority of them being M&M's factory robots, but there are a few more fun entries like the Motorcycle Mob, a gang of bikers who only appear early in the game as angry passersby who attempt to run you off the road. The name Motorcycle Mob comes from the game's manual. There appears to be 3 different bikers within the mob, with only one of those carrying over to the PlayStation version. Taking a closer look at that one in particular, he appears to just be a standard looking fat bearded biker, nothing too special. For the robots, there appears to be roughly 20 different ones throughout the course of the game. Then there's a few others only ever seen in Shell Shocked. Some animals are sprinkled in as well, but overall, these extended universe entries aren't exactly what we're looking for. They're counting more out of necessity. M&M's Blast, the second Game Boy game to look at, contains again a plethora of boring small-scale enemies that we're just gonna say right now, don't count. Most of the little creatures seen on screen are so minor they aren't worth spending any time on, except the non-animal creatures, they're right on the border. The only countable extended universe entry here is the game's final boss, the Haunted Furnace, 2001's only non-M&M's character worthy of inclusion on the timeline. After playing several levels of Mario Party-esque gameplay, you are faced against the Haunted Furnace, a big-eyed, fireball-spitting furnace whose sole purpose is to stop you from entering the game's ending doorway. Appearance-wise, this is more what we're looking for. Now into 2007, we're presented with another video game, this time M&M's Break 'em for the Game Boy Advance and DS. Again, both versions of the game aren't too different, so there's no need to compare the two against each other. Something you need to know right away about Break 'em is this is not a unique, developed from the ground up video game. It is instead a slightly altered version of the game Gem Smashers from 2001, developed by Frame Studios, the same people behind Break 'em. The two games are so similar that the first 7 enemies are nearly identical besides this slightly altered robot character. Out of pity, they'll be included on the timeline. Where things get considerably more interesting is with Break 'em's final boss, Mr. Runch. Despite the game's simplicity and completely irrelevant gameplay, the story is somewhat deep. Mr. Runch is described as a rotten and dangerous outlaw peanut who is determined to become an M&M. His plan includes using his starship to invade Planet Crunch and kidnap all inhabitants with the goal of using them to make a special chocolate shell to hide his rotten skin. He plans on doing this by using a crystallizing weapon that perma-freezes whatever it touches. The core M&M characters deem him too bitter and deserving of the reject bin. After you get done facing all the completely unrelated creature mini-bosses, you end up facing Runch as a final battle. Once defeated, he's revealed to have legs similar to the M&Ms, only to then have them seemingly removed once frozen by his own weapon. Out of all the M&M's related video games, the most notorious has to be M&M's Kart Racing from 2008, playable on the Wii and DS. This time each version of the game does differ significantly, so we'll be looking at them separately, starting with the Wii. The reason behind Kart Racing's infamy stems from its horrendous controls and overall extreme poor quality. Bad gameplay aside, does it contain unique M&M's characters? Well, actually, yes, sort of. Candy-wise, there's only the standard 5 colors, each of which is a playable driver, but when it comes to the racers you don't have access to, there's some never-before-seen characters. When starting up a race on any of the game's 15 tracks, you might notice how some of the non-player characters aren't M&Ms. Specifically, there's a robot, bug, and fox. When crossing the finish line and viewing the racer names, it's revealed they go by Robo, Cricket, and Foxy. Where these three characters fit into the M&M's universe is not clear whatsoever. Their inclusion is likely because the developers needed to fill the character roster and they had some random assets laying around. Some keen-eyed fans have noticed though how Foxy matches nearly perfectly with a character of the same name from the 1994 fighting game Brutal Paws of Fury. Why this is the case is again a mystery, but interesting to point out. In the DS version of the game, the only characters you race as or against are purely the 5 core M&Ms, but that doesn't mean there aren't more extended universe entries. Robo, Cricket, and Foxy are nowhere to be found, but we do see some racetrack enemies that go towards the count. For the DS version of kart racing, there are less maps than in the Wii, but for the ones they do have, they match thematically with prior courses. The biggest difference between the two is most tracks have NPC enemies sprinkled throughout the courses. Several of the enemies are rather lame, but some are quite interesting as they feature the iconic M&M's legs. It is possible these are actually M&M's characters hiding / disguising themselves under random objects. Regardless, they all enter the timeline. As well as this chef who is in fact human, but just too goofy and weird to leave out. A lesser known game from the same year, M&M's Adventure for the Wii and DS, again brings new characters, but man are they weird. Both versions of the game are very similar, so it isn't another kart racing situation. The storyline is again centered around the M&M's factory going haywire, which of course leads to rogue robots. Design-wise, these guys are fine, but they aren't food and aren't that M&M's related, making them rather lame entries. The game's menu actually categorizes them as equipment and gives them specific names, so at least there's that. Where things start to get real weird is with the game's 5 boss battles. For a reason that is not clear at all, each of the game's bosses are seasonally themed. There's Uncle Sam for the 4th of July, the Easter Bunny for Easter, a Jack-o'-lantern for Halloween, a snowman for Christmas, and a Cupid for Valentine's Day. The idea of basing these around the fact the M&M's candy has seasonal variants could have been a cool idea, but that isn't alluded to at all. They appear to just randomly exist in the factory, with some having minor roles like the Easter Bunny being in charge of the peanuts, Uncle Sam doing the candy coating, and Cupid is actually deemed a manager. The gameplay itself doesn't look half bad, and the designs too, not too shabby, but the voice acting, we're talking worst of all time.
Give me back my candies, you thief. You'll never escape from here as long as I'm in charge. Na 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 na, catch me if you can.
I can't believe this guy is a manager here.
2009, the year M&M's Beach Party released for the Nintendo Wii. A video game that surprisingly brings back Mr. Runch 2 years after his Breakem debut. The game is solely focused on 6 beach-themed minigames, one of which is titled Mr. Runch Slam, which features the Rotten Peanut not as some impressive endgame boss, instead as a small projectile meant to be plopped onto M-labeled lily pads. As for new character entries, one can be found in the Colorator arcade shooter minigame. In order to win, Colorator requires the player to paint colorless M&Ms as they run and hide, with the goal of having the highest number painted with your color by the end of the 60 seconds. Now, gray M&Ms we've seen before, the core M&Ms in gray, we've also seen that, but these guys are different. These Colorator colorless M&Ms are not meant to represent any core character, not even Blue, who's considerably heftier. They are instead meant to be neutral / blank slate characters whose only purpose is to get doused with paint. Little is known about these imposter peanut looking M&Ms, except the fact their M chest emblem is backwards. The only other M&M's game that needs investigated is the 2022 brain rot iOS and Android game M&M's Adventure. In the now defunct mobile game, also seen in M&M stores via giant arcade kiosks, is only 6 of the core mascots, no one else besides some occasional background pedestrians that, like the fish seen in Beach Party, aren't even being considered.